So yeah, being smart, acting dumb, I can definitely hold my own in this category. And I'm going to just give a quick talk. Yes, Cook City is included in this. So, mistakes. It's kind of, when you act dumb, sometimes you think you're being smart, but you're acting dumb. You can make mistakes. And we're human. And that does happen. And down here it says, I don't mind learning from my mistakes. I just don't want to earn a PhD. But I think, as professionals, we can all agree that we've learned some of our most valuable lessons from our mistakes. At least I hope we can say that. And we're all still here, so we've learned lessons from our mistakes. But fortunately, we haven't made mistakes to the point where they're irreversible. So sometimes mistakes are very costly, but you can reverse them or you can fix them and you learn a valuable lesson. But as professionals in the line of work that we do, we kind of walk this fine line of being lucky. Are we more skilled or is there more luck involved? And so, from what we've been hearing from a lot of stories today is, well, it felt good, or I really wanted to get out there and ski that slope, and as patrolmen and forecasters, it's like you see that big cornice sitting up there on the ridgeline, and you want to go up there and kick it. You're like, I know I can get that thing to break, but how close to the edge do you get before you back off? Or if you want to put an air blast out on a hard slab, or ski cut that big fat pillow, are you thinking, I'm that good, and I know I'm gonna get away with it, uncertain, for a fact, or is there some luck involved? And so we've kind of walked this fine line, and I think it's just super important from what we've been hearing that you just need to step back and just really assess the situation and say, is it worth it? Do I want to get lucky today? And maybe get away with it, maybe not. And sometimes our mistakes are irreversible. And we make mistakes that result in bad outcomes and sometimes fatalities. I don't think we have, but mistakes in our field, like Rod was saying, why do ski patrollers keep dying in avalanches and inbounds fatalities? And I think the close calls we're talking about could have ended up in this type of situation. So it's knowing what type of beast you're dealing with and what type of environment you're in can really help you avoid this type of situation, the plane crashing into the mountain. That's ultimately what we're trying to avoid. And so like we heard earlier, we have our Swiss cheese theory here. Here's our hazard. When we're out messing around on control work or out on a high hazard day when we're forecasting, we know there's a hazard, typically. We're not going into a situation blind. And when you end up with an accident, usually you are missing obvious clues. So you're bypassing multiple safeguards. You're convincing yourself, oh, I can get away with this. I can get just closer to that edge to kick the cornice. And so the latent conditions, these are the things that are kind of more beyond your control. You're out snowmobiling on the road and the natural avalanche comes down and just creams you. It's kind of something like that, or the girl has a seizure in the kayak and tips over. Those are kind of those things that you can't really control. You can, but they catch you off guard. But the ones that we really tend to move past are the active failures. And this pretty much falls into the heuristics category. The expert halo. I'm with a group of my best ski buddies. What could possibly go wrong? Things like, it's this zone here where we tend to end up with an accident. We overlook these obvious clues. And so I think it's just so important to keep reiterating. There's obviously a theme going on here that we need to just always be thinking about the worst case scenario. And we're human, and we're professionals. And even though we sign off and we sign on the dotted line and say, yes, we accept the risk, we're going out there, we're going to do it, we can be fooled. It's just what happens. And so you could almost kind of replace this with, it's stable, it's stable. You know, you got the Avalanche dragon here going, come on out, you know, it's all good. And when you know you've kind of passed some big collapses or some recent avalanche activity or something like that, yeah, we're human and we can be fooled. So I think it's really important to keep your ego in check and keep everything, always be looking around and paying attention. And, you know, the low danger thing, it's, you know, we had our first avalanche incident of the season the day we went to low. Yeah, it's low danger, and the kid rides down Hourglass, you know. But it's definitely something that can happen. So one of my first close call or near miss that I'm going to talk about is, see anything common going on here? I mean, we just need Mark to get up here and talk after I'm done, and we'll complete the circle.
I don't make mistakes.
Yeah, you don't. Especially in Cook City. So this happened last year, New Year's Eve day, Cook City, Marty slope. Pretty popular slope. It's not a huge slope, but remote trigger. We were in an avalanche warning. So if so, here's the advisory for that day. Warning for our entire forecast area. I mean, we've just been getting hammered with snow, but we've had a really dry December, one of the driest Decembers we've had. And, you know, the avalanche danger is rated high on all slopes. That's basically when we go into an avalanche warning. And if I scroll down, see, okay, Cook City, we just had 4 inches of water in the last couple days. Yesterday, Yellowstone Club, Big Sky triggered a bunch of avalanches. Oh, Eric was near Lulu Pass, where he triggered a small slope and observed tons of cracking and collapsing. So this was the day prior to my close call. It was, you know, the storm was raging, obviously, signs of instability, and so I should have read, you know. But I'm out there. I'm like, yeah, this is fine, you know. My friend, I'm with my ski patrol buddy John. Oops. And so this is after my close call. This is for the, you know, for the advisory, but this is just a little. The storm has dropped about 4 inches of water in this area over the last 3 days, so an extremely heavy load on top of these weak sugary facets. So you can see that it didn't take a lot of force. Got this thing with propagate, really sensitive conditions, high danger. I'm a little freaked out because I just had my near miss, which was demonstrated by the slide. That took out my snow pit. Okay, so that's after. So this is Marty's slope here. This is just kind of a picture of it. So the day dawned clear, bluebird. It was calm. It was really cold. It was about 5 degrees above zero. And like Carl said, we observed no naturals around, which was just crazy. We just had 4 inches of water on top of this weak snowpack, and there were basically no naturals to be seen. And we're like, God, this is really weird. And the road is right down here, the main trail up to Daisy Pass. And so we get off the sleds. This was like early in the morning. The sledders aren't out yet. They're all recovering, which was nice because this place can get crazy. So we skin up through the trees here, and there's this kind of rock rib. We skin up. We're trying to take the safest line we can. We get no cracking, no collapsing. It's just kind of eerie and quiet. I'm like, man, it's kind of strange. And so we're up, you know, it's only about ankle deep right here on this rock rib. Kind of doing some probe tests. Take a little step out. It's getting a little deeper. It's getting a little deeper. I'm like, okay, I want to do a stability test. And so my friend John is like, well, I'm going to stay right here on the rock rib. And I'm like, okay, you stay here. I'm just going to step out. I clicked out of my skis. They were actually on the rib. And I took like 4 steps out. I went from like ankle to shin to knee to thigh. So all of a sudden I'm like thigh, waist deep, and I don't know, from here to Carl, 10, 12 feet. Bust out my shovel, dig my hole, get out my saw, isolate this column, and this thing just pops out full, ECTPV upon isolation, just bing, like it was on springs. I mean, it was crazy. It was definitely one of the wildest stability tests I've ever done. And I go, John, this thing I just got it didn't just collapse, like it jumped out of the pit wall. And I was like, this thing it just sprung out on isolation. John's like, that's wild. He does this kick turn on the rock rib, and we just hear this, huge collapse. I'm standing, right about here. Here's my pit. And so I'm like, okay, we just got a huge collapse. And then I see this little thing of snow starting to trickle down over here. It collapsed up and around this grove of trees over to here, and then I could hear the collapse wave coming right at me. It was like this jet taking off, coming right at me. I'm like, oh my God. And I run out of my snow pit, and I jump up onto the rib, and all of a sudden this whole slope is just like, my snow pit, my backpack, my poles, like all my gear that was sitting in the pit ended up down in this zone here. So that's where my gear ended up. Fortunately, I didn't end up there with it. But I was just going, holy shit, that was crazy. But my ECTPV upon isolation was a great example, that you get those really sensitive test results. We remotely trigger the slope, so it validated what the test results said. And I just had an incredible learning experience. And so here's a picture looking up Marty Slope. This is from earlier this year. And you can see the snowmobilers just have a heyday on this slope. So as scary as it was, I felt good that I kind of triggered this slope. Someone else didn't trigger it from the bottom. But we were over here, and the weak layer propagated up around this grove of trees and started the slide over here, and then it collapsed back at me, which was really weird because I was only like 15 or 20 feet from where John was standing, and my pit was like the last place to go. And so this whole thing kind of went first, but yeah, super valuable lesson for sure. This is just looking at the slab, and as you saw from the video. And so bringing it back to Rod's mentioning depth horror. When you have these, depth horror is just like one of the craziest things. You always have to expect a bigger and badder avalanche than what you originally might anticipate. So lessons learned from this little event, kind of the ongoing theme of today: don't put yourself or partner in danger to collect data. Even though we really want to get out there, you want to kick the cornice, you want to blast the slope, you want to do whatever, just like it's not going to hurt you to just do it safely, even though you really want to get out there and dig your snow pit on a steep slope and whatnot. Communicate clearly with your partner. I should have just said, Marshall, I just got this crazy failure upon isolation. This thing is super sensitive. Don't move. I'm coming back to the rib. Just hang tight. As soon as I told him I got this ECTPV, he kicked turn and started going up the slope. It didn't seem like a big deal because he was still on the shoulder, and but that he just tickled it, and the whole thing went. So I think if you're at all feeling uncomfortable, just communication is super important. Expect the unexpected during high danger warning. We're in an avalanche warning. Why am I in the middle of a slope that can avalanche trying to dig a snow pit? High danger warnings are there for a reason. You can just pretty much expect.
It's just both your story and Carl's is you're looking around and you're not seeing any activity. You know the potential's there, but you're not seeing the direct.
No, it's true. And yeah, that definitely played a role in my decision making. We didn't get any cracking, no collapsing on the way up there. It was just kind of, everything seemed to be like it had kind of adjusted overnight or what, I don't know. trying to make up excuses why I wanted to get out on that slope and get a test result. But yeah, I think your surroundings play a pretty significant role.
I was just going to say one of the things that I forgot to mention during my talk, that I went around and looked at some of those other places that that hadn't slid, that had all the high marks around on them, and what I had overlooked was the fact that we had a long period of clear weather, and the layer that was a bad weak layer was a layer near surface facets, and so all the typical places where snowmobilers went had all been completely packed down during that period of near surface faceting. So you could go up there and find a lot of stable slopes as long as they went back to those same slopes, and that's why there were all these tracks in these areas, and that's why, but typically they didn't ride on that one slope that I was going up, which had a more undisturbed snowpack. So that was I forgot to mention that during mine, but that's what we finally figured out.
And this slope typically just gets creamed by sledders, but it had been a super dry December. I don't think we got more than 4 or 6 inches of snow in Cook City through most of the month. And then it was really cold, so we know we had this ongoing weak layer development and a pretty bad depth hoar problem. And and so that led to it, and I don't think the sledders were really getting out. And then all of a sudden it was New Year's, throw 4 inches of water, the first significant storm we've had in a long time. People were just amped, including myself. And so I don't think the sledders had really mowed down a whole lot of this terrain. I think this was really the first.
Was this the day after the fatality?
This was the day of.
The day of.
Two fatalities. So there were 2 fatalities in Cook City on the same day. And so then this happened to me. I was like, oh my God. And then 4 hours later, we're doing a fatality investigation. And so it was 2, actually. So it was a pretty intense day down there in Cook City, for sure.
Eric, what was the slope angle on that?
It was about 34, right where my pit slid. Yeah. So if they tell you it's under 35, don't worry about it. And so I think when we're dealing with these really unstable conditions, like Doug was saying, Grant was measuring these slabs that were pulling out at 25 degrees. And I think when you have really unstable conditions, don't get on anything steeper than 25. I think you're putting yourself in some danger by doing that. And so the theme continues. Mount Abundance. So this is the same year. This is in February. Avalanche danger was already considerable. So we know we had this really bad depth hoar problem. We've had a lot of snow since, so things are kind of slowing down a little bit. But we still know we have depth hoar. And depth hoar sucks. I mean, that's just kind of the bottom line. No matter if you're in the ski area or in the backcountry, depth hoar just goes bigger and crazier than you think it's gonna. And so this is my next close call. This is Mount Abundance, kind of southeast facing slope. I triggered this slide from right down in here in this group of trees, skinning up. Again, I'm like, I didn't need to be here. I didn't need to go to this slope to collect data. I already knew we had a problem, but I'm like, I want to get up here and try to collect some data. I'm going for it. And I was with my friend BJ's, super good skier. So we're kind of skinning up through the trees. We're not noticing anything unusual, no cracking, no collapsing. And this is just kind of looking, after we trigger the slide, I mean, you can just see it's a pretty significant avalanche, 2 to 4 feet deep, a couple 100 feet wide. It would have got you for sure. And obvious, do you think we have a depth hoar problem? Yeah, just right on the ground. This is looking up the path. Pretty ugly. So here's where we triggered it from. And we're feeling, this is all low angle in the trees, but we kind of come to this big bunch here, and kind of as this roadblock. You're like, well, I know I can just get out, and then maybe get into this next pocket here, and just kind of see how things are going. And I take 2 steps out, kind of between these 2 trees and this tree. And again, the snow was only like shin deep. So there's kind of a theme here between the last slide and this one, and it went from very shallow to pretty deep in a very short distance. And so I'm kind of probing. I'm like, it's getting a little deeper. And I get right out between these 2 trees, and it's just like, and I start trying to backpedal with my skins on, which isn't the easiest thing to do. My friend BJ gives me a hand, and he kind of helps me down. And we kind of tuck into here, and we just watch the whole mountainside come rumbling by, basically right at our ski tips. And it was pretty intense. And I'm just like, oh my God, get me out of here, you know? Never come to Cook City again. And so here's a picture of where we triggered it from. You can see the slab here. It's only, this deep, 6 to 8 inches deep, and then literally out by these trees, it's probably 3 feet deep. And so we really should have been paying attention to that. There's no, this is super shallow. It's crappy. There's no reason to try to get out and expose yourself just to get, a few feet up. But again, we're just like, I think you just stay here, just watch me. I'll just try to, the slab, it's deep, it's pretty, it's supportable. That was another big problem with this scenario, was the slab it was a hard slab, super supportable, easy to maneuver on, but you just trigger it in the wrong spot, and obviously gets everything going. So this is just kind of one of those problems that we were dealing with, and we're kind of dealing with this type of problem this year as well, where a lot of the slides that people are triggering are from areas where the slab is, a foot or less deep. It's propagating into deeper areas. So this is kind of just what we watched go rumbling by. And this is looking down the path. And our snowmobiles were parked down here on the lower bench. But after I watched the whole path just go, basically full on, I'm like, oh my God. We just buried the sleds under 20 feet of snow. I was pretty nervous. And after everything had kind of gone by and we realized that, we weren't going to get caught. That was my next fear. Fortunately, it didn't go all the way there. So, again, don't put yourself in danger. Try to get that data. It's kind of one of the major points that I've learned. And now, like Doug was saying, putting 2 people in a snow pit is just, it's a dicey maneuver unless you're on really flat terrain. But if you're like, hey, we're out ski touring, let's just stop and dig a hole. If you're in any sort of avalanche terrain, have one person get out there, dig that hole, do a quick stability test. Okay, I'm feeling pretty good. Bring that second person in. I pretty much do that every time now after these Cook City events. And be aware, changing snow conditions. You're doing your pole probe. Okay, it's a foot deep here. 10 feet away, it's 3 feet deep. You got some major changes going on, and that's something to think about. Choose the safest line possible, both up and down. Going back to Carl's talk, we were obviously choosing a safe line. If we were both kind of out in the middle of the slope, it would have been super ugly. It wasn't a safe choice trying to go out and around that tree band. That was just poor decision making there. So just always be thinking about the what ifs. I got to just choose the safest line. Communicate clearly. We were communicating, but again, it's, BJ, I think, said to me after this, he was going, I wasn't feeling so good about going out around that tree band, but he didn't tell me until the whole mountain went by. Something that maybe you should say before the event happens. Never underestimate the size and destructive power of avalanches. We wouldn't be here if avalanches didn't catch people off surprise. So they just have a tendency to go bigger and be more destructive than what you think they're going to be. And then always park your sleds in a safe spot, which is a pretty important one too. So that should do it for now. Any questions?